Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is my 2022 Mark 8 Volkswagen GTI, and today I'm going to talk about why I chose a GTI over some of the competitors. And the main cars that I was considering were the Civic Si, the Subaru BRZ, the Subaru WRX, and also the Elantra N. So let's go ahead and hop inside and go for a drive. Alright guys, so the main car that I was considering getting over this one was the Civic Si. So I'm going to save that one for last. Let's talk about the Elantra, BRZ, and WRX first. So let's start off with the Elantra. So why did I pick the GTI over a Elantra N? So number one, I'm not a huge fan of the looks of the Elantra N. It's a great car, the performance is amazing, it's actually slightly faster than a GTI, but I'm just not a huge fan of the looks. And Hyundai in general, I've never really been a fan of their vehicles. Again, not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just I'm not really a huge fan of their vehicles. Another thing, it's not a hatchback, so it's not as practical as the GTI, and I like the ease of use for the hatchback, you know, putting bigger items in and stuff like that. I haven't had to use the hatchback yet, but I do like having it. Let's go on to the Subaru BRZ. So the BRZ, it's not practical. So I wanted to get a second car to complement my Mustang, a car that, you know, does other things well. And the BRZ is kind of like a small, better handling, but way slower and way less cool version of the Mustang. At least in my eyes it is. So it wouldn't make sense for me to get a BRZ when I have my Mustang, because my Mustang's a two-door coupe, it's fast, rear-wheel drive, you can slide it, it's fun. So, I mean, it doesn't really make sense for me to get a BRZ. Another thing is the gas mileage is horrendous. Like, for how small of a vehicle that is, the gas mileage is really not that good. My GTI gets way better gas mileage than a BRZ would. Another thing is I've heard that the ride quality of those BRZs, and I've driven BRZs before, not the newest gen, but the previous one, the ride quality is pretty harsh, and the interior is very, very tight. So I'm going to be like pushed up against the dash and everything like that. And me being 6'6" at this point, it wouldn't work for me. I love it, but it wouldn't really work for me. Another thing is the speed and performance. So obviously we know BRZs are not really known for their speed, but the new BRZ is a lot better than the old one, and they're actually decently quick. The only problem is that they have no torque. So in a daily driver, you want torque to be able to, you know, cruise around at low speeds, you know, where you don't have to wind out the car all the time to get power. My GTI has that. The BRZ does not. Next up, let's talk about the Subaru WRX. So the new WRX has some decent power numbers. It's like 273 horsepower, something like that, 271. It's one of those numbers. I'll put it up on the screen. So the performance is pretty good. There's nothing wrong with the performance. The only issue is that the gas mileage, again, is horrible in the WRX. The new WRX, I'm not a huge fan of the looks. The old one did look amazing. It's just, it feels very primitive as far as like technology and features and just looking updated. It feels like a really old school style car. And maybe some people that own those, maybe that kind of is the appeal to the WRX, is that it feels so old and mechanical. But I wanted something like, if I'm going to buy a 2022, a brand new vehicle, I want it to at least feel, you know, modern. And the WRX just doesn't really feel modern. Another thing is, if I were to get a WRX, I'd get a manual transmission, and the manual in those are super clunky. So the transmission, like, and it's not me being bad at driving manual or anything like that, but the transmission feels really clunky in those, and it's very hard to be smooth. I've gotten in other manual transmission vehicles, hop in, for example, the BRZ manual. You hop in, you feel like a professional. But the WRX, it's really, really clunky and really hard to be smooth with it. And they do feel a little cheap inside, and not that that's a deal killer or anything like that, but it's just not for me. All right, guys, now let's talk about the SI, which is the closest competitor, the one that I was really thinking of getting. So the SI, in comparison to the GTI, is way slower. Like, it's a huge, huge difference in performance. The Civic Si gets 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds, and a quarter mile 15.1 at 94 miles an hour, according to Car and Driver. Car and Driver gets very promising times, but since they have basically every single car, I use them to measure performance, because if I compare Car and Driver to Car and Driver, then I feel like, you know, it's a good way to compare cars against each other. The GTI gets 0 to 60 in 5.1, which is way faster than 6.8, and the quarter mile on the GTI is 13.6 at 105. So not only is it way faster as far as the time's concerned, but it traps at 105, whereas the SI traps at 94. So the GTI is about a $3,000 price difference to get a base GTI over a Civic Si. I mean, that performance difference is massive when you really think about it. So it's a little too slow. I know it's supposed to be a daily driver, that's why I was going to get a new car, but it's a little too slow for my taste, and knowing that the GTI is available, that's way faster and has way more features. It's just a much nicer vehicle. For example, I have LED fog lights, whereas the new Civic Si does not. Heated seats and a heated steering wheel, the new Si does not. A really nice DSG fast shifting transmission, whereas the Si is only available in manual. The exhaust on the GTI does cool little pops and burps on upshifts, whereas the Si is dead silent and you can't really hear anything. And the GTI isn't like loud by any stretch of the imagination, but it is much better than the Si when it comes to exhaust note. Another thing is, it's not a hatchback. I know the Si can't really do anything about it, so I shouldn't fault it for that, but it's not a hatchback. So, you know, I like having the hatchback versatility, and I also like the smaller proportions of a hatchback, because when you have a hatchback, it cuts off the back like this, and you still have good trunk space, whereas a sedan goes down and out. So the sedans are a little bit longer. Another thing that I was taking into consideration is I was doing a lot of research online on like the gas mileage, the real world gas mileage of both the Si and the GTI. And in the real world on the highway, the GTI gets the same gas mileage as the Si. Because that was my initial appeal to the Si, is the great gas mileage, it's fun, you know, it's a Honda, reliable, you know, stuff like that. But the GTI gets pretty much the same real world gas mileage as the Si. So, you know, it makes more sense to get the much more powerful GTI and have the same gas mileage. And then last but not least, the GTI was actually available for a good price, whereas the Si, you can't really find it anywhere. So not only was it available to me at a good price, but it's much better for what I'm going to use it for. Alright guys, as I was editing the video, I realized that I wasn't too specific when it comes to what features the GTI has over the Si. So let me quickly go over that for you. So in the front here, we have front parking sensors. See, we have front parking sensors there. The Si does not. We also have these nice LED fog lights. We come along to the side here. There's a puddle light underneath this mirror that lights up like a cool design on the ground. It's like a golf ball. The GTI has vented disc in the rear and also has red painted brake calipers. Unlike the Si, where it does not have vented disc, it only has standard disc in the rear, and it has just regular calipers. It doesn't have painted calipers. Another thing is that the GTI's calipers are way bigger than the SI's. Looking at the rear, you can see the GTI has full LED taillights. It also has a LED turn signal and a reverse light. The Si only has a LED taillight. It has a standard bulb for the turn signal and the reverse light. Also on the GTI, you get rear parking sensors as well. Looking at the inside here, you can see we have full digital gauges, whereas the Si only has like partly digital gauges and part analog. So GTI is fully digital. It also has these really bright LED lights on the interior. The Si has incandescent regular bulbs. Not to mention, this one does have very nice ambient lights that go along the bottom here and the door handles and all that stuff at night. So it makes it look very nice. The Si does not have any sort of ambient lighting at all on the interior. Also, with me being very tall, the GTI does not have a sunroof. So I actually sat in a Si and I was actually really close to the top. I was actually touching my head, so I'd have to kind of slouch in the seat in order to fit. The GTI has a tremendous amount of headroom, and your rear seat passengers also have air vents right here, which Honda didn't even include in the Acura Integra, let alone the Si. So the GTI overall is just a much more premium, better place to be. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on my reasoning on why I picked the GTI over everything else. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.